Dear colleagues, friends, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I am Olena Zimba and I will be a moderator of today's meeting. I am very happy to introduce our today's speakers. Our first speaker is Latika Gupta, who is one of the leading Indian rheumatologists and highly skilled author, editor, and reviewer. And our next speaker is Dr. Armen Gasparian, who is one of the leading British journal editor, author, reviewer, and also expert in bibliographic databases. Please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Latika. You can start your presentation.
Thank you, Lena.
One moment, I have to, one moment. I have to allow share your screen. Yes.
Is the PowerPoint visible?
Yes, everything is fine.
All right. Good evening, all. It's lovely to meet you again through this webinar. And today we'll be talking about Altmetrics for the evaluation of journal societal impact. So last time we went into the role of social media in academia, but today we'll dig slightly deeper and there's a lot to learn and know about the definition and the various platforms available, the unique coverage by each Altmetrics provider, and the golden question whether it correlates with citations or not, and how we can increase our Altmetrics scores. So in brief about Altmetrics, we go over it once more, that attention to research from non-traditional sources is captured by Altmetrics. And this includes a wide variety of sources, which may be unconventional, like apart from journal articles, it includes social media, blog posts, news items, or policy documents. And these are the new indicators of research impact, which may complement but not replace the traditional metrics. So there are more broader attention of a more broader metric for measuring the impact of research. And why do we need it? So basically, if we look at the attention our research gets, then the first mention on social media may come as early as a few hours or even minutes as soon as the article is online. But if we look at the conventional metrics, they take months or sometimes years to accrue. And this takes a very long time, and sometimes some years down the line, the researcher may have changed interests or maybe in a new post, may not be interested in that as much at that point. So in this fast-paced world, we need a faster metric, and this term was coined by Jason Prem, who's a founder of Impact Story, one of the leading providers of Altmetric scores for individual researchers. And so this was way back in 2010, as you see, and it started with a tweet, rightly so, as we can think now. So the common portals for Altmetrics, all of you may have heard of altmetrics.com. Apart from that, PlumX is another leading provider, which is completely paid, while Altmetrics, some of the services may be free. And then PLOS group of journals have launched their own article level metrics, and Impact Story is more for an individual researcher rather than for individual articles or a journal. So today we'll be concentrating more on the first two, and also some papers which have studied all of them clubbed together. And just in brief about the Altmetric donut, which you would have seen next to various articles in scholarly journals, it represents a real-time measurement of the impact or the attention a journal article or any is getting. So it is broad and diverse. So as you can see, it covers a lot of sources which range from policy documents to news, blog posts, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media platforms. And the various colors stand for one platform or the other. And even the breadth of the platforms would represent the amount of attention you're getting from that particular platform. For example, if it is more blue in color, then it's probably from Twitter, while this one has received its attention more from blogs and from policy documents. While here, it's more of mainstream media coverage like news items. And then the number, it's another story which we'll come to in a while. So Another amazing aspect of this is if you want to look at the distribution, whether your article is being talked about only in your local circle, suppose you're in the United States, so you can look at the Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus. Google Plus is no more, but then the other demographics, which will give you a good idea, and then you can even time zone your tweets, because suppose you create a tweet and you're in the United States, and it is at 3 a.m. in the night, not a lot of people will see it, and your local circles will miss it as well. So there is a massive load of Twitter feeds, and even if you fall behind by a few minutes, sometimes it goes low down in the Twitter feed, and your article may just fall off the radar. No one will pay attention to it. So it's important to see and learn, and then probably disseminate your articles accordingly. And as Bibliometrics, this is another provider for Altmetrics, and it measures metrics which are not visible immediately, like especially Altmetrics may miss some of the indicators here, which may be very important, like usage. So over time, people have learned that usage of a particular article correlates better with the clicks, downloads, because obviously if you want to use an article, you want to go through it in detail, and you'll end up downloading it or viewing it, or if it's a video play. So this is again not captured by Altmetrics. So this is unique about Plumprint. It captures some unique aspects like bookmarking, keeping an article or URL as favorite, or save in your reference manager. And then mentions from blog posts, and a wide variety of mentions, even comments are captured here, which are not typically recorded by Altmetric. And then social media, yes, likes, shares, and tweet. And citations. One unique aspect here is patent citations. So suppose you did conducted some research and resulted in a patent, then that's important, or it became part of a policy or clinical citations. It's a clinical sign you described, which now enter the textbooks. And that's something which deserves attention and is important, and it's Plumex will help you measure the impact of that kind of research. So there are unique advantages of each of these. So Altmetrics is more for institutions like publishers, libraries, and universities, both Altmetrics and Plumex, while Impact Story is more for an individual researcher who wants to include Altmetrics in their CV. So here it will sync with the various social media and or the other platforms, and it will gather the impact of an individual and downloadable in a CV format. So this is a web-based tool which individually records the individually assigned permanent identifiers. So DOIs, URLs, PubMed IDs, everything related to your name, and links to ORCID ID or Publons. So all of it can be clubbed together. Even SlideShare, if you've uploaded your slides in SlideShare, GitHub, data sets, archives, all of these are recorded by Impact Story. While Altmetrics, as we talked about, the advantages covers a wide variety of blogs, so more than 8,000 blogs, apart from the DOIs, archives. RepEc is for academic fellows, and then handles and PubMed IDs. Also, the advantage with Altmetrics is you can query certain dates. So what was the Altmetrics score of this article on this date, or specific to a journal. So it's a database where you can search it just like PubMed, restricted to a journal, a publisher, or a particular platform, and also by the mesh ID. So medical subject headings. So, and these are downloadable as CSV files, which can then be analyzed conveniently. And for Plumex, digging deeper, it captures these so-called artifacts like videos, audios. Suppose you record a talk, it's on YouTube, so this will be captured by Plumex. Book chapters, which are again not captured, but a lot of these are used in clinical trials, or if there are new trials that are registered in the protocols list, your previous work, then that would be counted as well. So it works with ORCID and the other IDs, and even patent numbers, as I said earlier. So it includes various aspects. So now coming to the most important question, which we all know, and somehow like instinctively, whether we like social media or not, some of you may like to believe that, yes, Altmetrics would correlate with citations, while some of you would be like, of course they do not. So depending on whichever group you are in, we'll today look at the evidence, and the answer is not really simple. Could be a yes or no. It's a complicated relationship depending on a lot of factors. So Altmetrics typically measure the attention your article is getting, and that may depend on a lot of other factors. So the covariates can include the journal impact factor. For example, if I'm publishing in Science, more people are likely to read it because everyone thinks Science is a great journal, which of course it is, but there will be a component benefit added up because of the impact factor of the journal. While if it is an obscure journal, even if the research is good, then it is less likely to be noticed. Then time since publication is another thing, because the longer an article has been around, the higher the citation count would be, as we saw earlier. So the correlation between Altmetric score and citation would obviously depend on the time since publication. Also, what is your source of Altmetrics? So who is reading your research? Who's giving it attention? Is it an academic? Yes, we are 20, 30 people of us here. Maybe all of us are academics. So if we read an article, there's a higher probability that we're going to cite it because we're aware of this kind of research. And but if there is a group of school kids who comes across it, or clinicians who are not into research, then it's less likely to be cited. So of course, who is reading your research? Like, people have shown that if it is published on Mendeley, where it's mostly researchers, then there's a better correlation. And then there are clusters of attention and cycle of change, which is a very interesting concept, and we'll talk about it in a while. So this is the goal impression, and the citations correlate most with access statistics. So, and here the correlation is moderate, and some studies have shown weak correlation with overall citation rate, but with access statistics, it's around 0.4 to 0.5 based on the different studies. So if a URL is clicked, or if there are PDF downloads or HTML clicks or XML clicks, then those are correlating better with citations. And of course, bookmarking with various service providers like Mendeley, they correlate with Web of Science citations. So if you look at the top 100 publications as measured by Altmetrics in suppose the field of inflammatory demyelinating disease, then the authors of this paper looked at the number of articles per year which fulfilled, which were the top publications as measured by Altmetrics, so which could cross a certain threshold of Altmetric score. And as you can see, in the earlier years, there were very few number of articles who fulfilled that criteria. While after 2014, there was some sort of a digital revolution in that the number of articles has gradually gone up. So definitely attention to science on digital platforms has gone up with the wider usage of smartphones and the World Wide Web. And of course, with this pandemic, probably things will change further. Also, as we said, a higher journal impact factor may also lead to a higher Altmetric attention score. If you go on like Instagram, which is not typically a scientific platform, but your friend has followed the account of NEJM, then yeah, the people do suffer from the fear of missing out. You may just follow it as well, that yes, I should be aware of the research coming on NEJM, but then if there is Instagram account of another journal which is not that popular, then you may not follow it, you know. So so there is a component that journal impact factor may mean higher attention score. Like here is as you see, the authors of this paper, they looked at the Altmetric attention score and the journal impact factor, and there was a weak but significant correlation. So it is also important to know that Altmetric attention score may not necessarily mean it's great scientific quality, because attention can also be bad attention, as we all would agree. So, so looking at this paper, another important aspect of citation rate was the time passed since publication. Of course, the number of years that have gone by. If it's been longer, then there would be more and more citations. And The authors of this paper conducted an analysis on the articles published in Annals of Rheumatic Disease, which is one of the leading rheumatology journals, and they said that 10% of the variability in citation numbers could be explained by the time passed since publication. So the longer the time, the more were the less was the variability, and additional 4.7% was explained by Altmetrics. So Altmetrics may have some sort of a relation with the citation numbers, but it's not entirely contributive. And clinical science articles have better altmetric attention scores than basic or translation articles. Now let's look at it critically. Suppose you're on Twitter, it's evening, it's off work hours, and you're just browsing through some feed, and there are 3 different articles which come up. So one is an editorial on something interesting, a debate, you click on it, you go through it, it's a short article. One is a clinical science, so you look at the abstract quickly. One is a basic science, hardcore. Suppose it talks about in silico modeling of COVID-19 and the receptors and the pockets where it fits in. Would you want to go through it? So maybe it's more challenging, and also the expertise of the people will be narrow, and the few people who can follow that kind of research. So the altmetric attention score will also depend on the user base that is available. So if it's a very narrow user base, then the attention scores are likely to shrink. And this is what the authors of this paper found as well, and the editorials do better. And then again, there have been studies showing that open access does better, of course, because if it's not accessible, then you can't really go into it. So another important concept is tweetations. So we need to get to understand the language of Twitter here, because this very popular and one of the earliest papers on the usage of social media for article promotions studied this aspect where tweeted articles, especially within the first week of publication, those were highly tweeted, were 11 times more likely to be cited. So, and more citations on Google Scholar than Scopus. So they correlated better because Google Scholar typically samples citations from various sources. And whether the articles were tweeted because they were more cited, but tweeting occurred earlier. So, but of course, causation has not been really studied, but an association is definitely documented. So, so learning the language of Twitter, Tweetations, as this term was coined by in this article, which first came up in 2013, where Tweetations are described by any journal article which is cited or mentioned in a tweet. So any tweet mentioning an article or carrying a DOI or a URL, that's a tweetation. And so any tweet can also be called officially as tweetation. While twin impact factor is a number of tweets within the first 7 days after the publication, which is said to be an extremely important aspect because it is more predictive for later citations, provided you adjust for other confounding variables, which we'll also talk about in subsequent slides. And then to index is the rank percentile of an article within the journal compared to the past 20 articles. So suppose you have 20 articles and you have a twin index. 100 means it's the top ranked, highest ranked article compared to the previous 19 articles. Or if it's 95, then it's the second highest ranked article. So leaving these aside, again, bringing you to this concept of Twitter, if you look at the Twitter attention a published article gets, right after publication, there is a spike and people talk about it around 2 weeks and then it dies out, while the cumulative tweets gradually go up as expected. But this is your very narrow window of internet-based attention. Essentially, this is the make or break period where you either make it or break it. And then here the authors look at the number of tweetations per article within 1 week. And those who had the highest tweetation, so the highest tweetation is not best one person tweeting it again and again, but more people tweeting about it. And those had this either double star or single star. So single star was associated with a high citation, that is featuring within top percentile of citations on Google Scholar, and the other one for Scopus. So now dissecting out the Altmetric attention score, which we're going on talking about again and again, how is it calculated? Is it just adding up all the components? Suppose your article is tweeted on 10 platforms, discussed on 10 platforms, mentioned 10 times each, is it 100? Not really, it's not that simple actually. So there's some rules here, like if I go and tweet one article 7 times, it just records it as one event. So it has to be discussed by more than one person. And there's a weighted score. So if your article features on a newspaper, then it gets a higher score, around a weightage of 8, while blog post is around 3, and tweet is 1, and Facebook post is even lesser, it's 0.25. So it depends who's talking about it and where it's being talked about, and newspaper mentions definitely get you a very high Altmetric attention score, but as you can think and believe, newspaper mentions may not really translate into citations later. So that is why the relationship of Altmetrics with citations is really tenuous. And another rule 3 is it depends who's talking about it. So suppose one doctor talking to another, yes, that's important. They're discussing this article, this scientific article. But if it is a journal account pushing the link, no, they're going to give it less weightage. So AAS is calculated with a lot of variables in mind, and it is a weighted approximation of all the attention. This is the weightage that you get. News post is around 8, blog is 5, and policy document is 3. Patents are again 3, but most of the others are 1. And the smaller platforms, Facebook is not really small, but it is 0.25 here, and Pinterest. So YouTube, all of these carry less weightage. And also it's a game of rounded numbers, which makes it all the more complicated. So suppose the mention of Facebook by one person is 0.25, but it is rounded to 1. But if 3 people talk about it, again, it's 0.75, it still remains 1. So how to predict all these? Plus, there's some modifiers. So suppose I posted a tweet, someone just retweeted, they did not really modify it or anything, just reposted second-hand info, so it gets less weightage, 0.85. But it also depends on who's retweeting it. So suppose it's an influencer, a person who has got a lot of followers and they retweet, then it gets higher points. Also depends on how often this person tweets about research outputs. So if this person is tweeting about research outputs, it's important. And if this person tweeting about a lot of papers from the same journal, no, this is a journal selling, or this person sold to the journal, then it's a promotional intent and they'll get a lower score. Publisher accounts are lower scores, and influencer account would be higher scores. So suppose someone like Dr. Eric Topol tweets or retweets a tweet, it'll be higher score, and it may reach 1.1. So it'll be rounded up to 2. So it's straight away double. So yeah, so all these factors considered, and all said and done, the correlation with citation reaches a max of 0.6. In most studies, it's lower for most, depending on the setting and the kind of analysis that's conducted. And it depends who's the person giving attention to a research. If it's Mendeley or 1000, which is again a platform where researchers get together, then there's a better correlation. And looking at the fallacies of the Altmetric attention score, as you would guess by now, the authors of this paper, which was published recently, devised the social media impact score. And they said that this is really important because immediately after publication, it predicts subsequent citations. So what did the authors of this paper do? They took up the Altmetric attention score, they removed the weightage, because newspaper articles, blog posts, all that is not so relevant to us. We're looking at citation research articles. So in scholarly journals, so they just take the unweighted AAS. So each event, so if it is tweeted 7 times, they take it to 7 events. They remove all kind of complexities. And then they adjust for the journal impact factor as one of the continuous covariates. They also adjusted for the days since publication. And they said that there's a very short window of spotlight, as also shown by the previous paper we discussed, that around day 14, the number of tweets or the Altmetric scores as well, not just tweets, they also flatten out, and this is the plateau is reached. So they adjusted for the days, first 14 days since publication. And after that, they look at the correlation. They only studied articles from the top journals like Cell, JAMA, Nature, NEJM, Science, and Lancet. And they found a correlation with the number of citations. So they said that the social media score tells us that journal impact factor and time are important covariates. And the articles in the top quartiles of the social media score were also in the top quartiles of citations. And the uppermost quartile of social media score was 5 times more likely to be in the highest quartile of sites as well, while the Altmetric attention score did not show similar trends. And they also conducted validation of the score on another data set and found similar results. And they said that probably the Altmetric attention score alone is not predictive, but maybe contributive to citations when the confounding effect of other factors is just adjusted for. So by now you've got an idea that the Altmetric attention is based on various factors. And this is exactly what the authors of this paper also set out to study. So they broke down the components of the Altmetric attention score, and they included attention from various metrics, not just the AAS, but also I think they took the PlumX and others. And they assigned a score of 1 to each, and they tried to see how do these components cluster in a large data set. So what is the pattern? Which particular metrics tend to cluster together? And the results here were pretty interesting. So they found 3 distinctive clusters, as you can see. And this cluster, this particular one, had all the important metrics which go hand in hand with the traditional publication metrics, as citations. They found citations on Crossref, on Scopus, and PubMed, and downloads, as we saw earlier, that they have some sort of correlation. They correlate the best. So these all clustered together, and even bookmarking beside you like. So again, this is citation platform where you can bookmark. And then there's a platform, this cluster 2, where you see blog lines, social bookmarking, XML downloads. So it's like just general platforms where you discuss stuff. And third one is very interesting, which actually gave them some insight, is replies to no thread, researchblogging.com. So these are research platforms where the articles were being discussed in great detail. People were commenting on them, and there were responses to these comments, and all of these were captured in this cluster. And interesting that here the article is being discussed, but this is distinctive from this cluster, the citation cluster. So this led the authors to talk about the process of change or the transition. So also known as pathways knowledge translation. So this is the stage of pre-awareness and awareness, agreement, adoption, and adherence. So whenever there's a new piece of information, first you disseminate the knowledge, and then the information is processed, and then people get the context, and gradually it's adopted. So citation is like adopting, or adherence is the final stage in accepting a piece of information. And so if you look at the dimensions of Altmetrics, they're varied. So there are traditional impact factors like citations, and there is an active component, which is where people are discussing, absorbing, and assimilating that information. And there's an inactive component where people just discuss it. It's just they read it and go. So so this led to the hypothesis that maybe authors and even publishers may like to pay attention to this active group of metrics. So if articles are discussed more, they're also more likely they will be part of the process of transitioning towards acceptance of the knowledge and adoption, adherence, and also citation maybe. And publishers should probably more open to launch open peer review, even post-publication discussions on online platforms. So decoding this for you again, in simpler terms, if you have newsworthiness in your data, that is the interesting and relevant findings, there are many confounders which will determine whether your article is absorbed or rejected. So it's journal visibility, accessibility, that is open access, social media strategy, whether they're even promoting or not, the audience, whether you have them in their followers or using the hashtags or not, And then there's social media buzz, public attention, social change. All of these are also factors which will influence the result. Social impact metrics, which eventually are part of the transition into citations to some extent. Another important aspect is tweetations follow the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, that 80% of the target, like this is in sync with the Pareto principle in community fundraising. Like most of the funds, 80% of the funds come from 20% of the people. That way, 80% of the popular tweets will come from just 20% of people who are tweeting. So you can really, if you did it well, you can really do it well. And also article placement order is another thing which may determine whether it's visible. So people have shown here in this wonderful paper published this year that rheumatoid arthritis among the rheumatic diseases, papers from RA are more likely to be placed first in the journal, and those which are placed in the rank order, the first 3 articles receive much more attention than the last 3 articles. And as you can see, their Altmetric attention scores are invariably 5 points or more higher than the last 3 articles. And also there's a disciplinary impact. So in this paper, people show that the general papers or social science papers have better Altmetric scores. And again, there are 3 metrics, the societal metrics, which would be like Facebook, blog posts, where articles are discussed, and research impact. Actually, this is very interesting that URL clicks and PDF downloads are highest for the social sciences, maybe because the science is more about reading and discussing literature. That is what the science revolves around, rather than working in the hospital like that way. And the intermediate metrics like Wikipedia, highest for lay public, and medicine scored low on all domains. So this was actually surprising and also a little shameful, but then this is how it is. They comprise less than 10% of readers on Mendeley and other platforms, maybe because this is not the focus of their work and research is a secondary objective. So just before we reach the end of our presentation, this recent paper, which was highly publicized and discussed, and actually came as a surprise to me as well, and challenged my beliefs about Altmetric attention scores, which said that tweeting about your research does not appear to influence citations. And yeah, it is not a very good news for a social media editor. So I thought maybe we can look at it closely. They used articles which were published in Rheumatology and from 2010 to 2015. And then they took the Altmetric attention score and then they correlated it with downloads, citations, and Altmetrics. That's it. So that's what was done in this paper. And would any of you like to critically look at it? What may have maybe the reason for these results, that there is absolutely no correlation, unlike a few other studies. So the articles were from 2010 to 2014, and a period of low social media attention, then used total AAS, which we've discussed in depth, that this has its fallacies and may probably be broken down and looked at closely to identify the impact. So maybe this conclusion may need to be re-examined, but definitely we need to look at greater means of increasing visibility, as the AAS may not suffice. And so people are looking at various means like infographics, podcasts, videos, online journal clubs, and discussion threads. So on similar lines, the study looked at original research articles and disseminated infographics, followed by a 4-week washout period and a crossover study to look at the impressions, retweets, and article visits. And they also used podcast promotion, which is really seemed like a tedious task from this figure, where there's a critical review, recording, editing, and then promotion, discussion, and then writing another review article on the podcast, and then peer review and publishing the summary. So it's a complicated process. But what they found that infographics improved Twitter impressions. This is the Twitter impressions after infographics, and this is without infographics, and the average. But the abstract views improved, but the full text didn't. So maybe once people had an infographic, they felt more confident that, yes, we know about the study now. They did not feel like reading the entire paper. So this was an interesting aspect which needs to be looked at in great detail. And also number needed to view was higher for the infographics because, yeah, people did not go through the entire article. Like a podcast, it was more similar to control articles. Another important aspect is that most data remains uncited. So whenever you're analyzing, so look at this figure, like 85 to 90% of papers actually never have a citation and also never have an Altmetric score, especially before in the period before 2014. And also after that, it's improving now though. And so when analyzing, it's best to just exclude those. And another aspect is articles with DOI are the one, digital object identifiers. So they are the ones who are cited in scholarly research, while a lot of information goes around with high altmetric scores has just URLs. So that may also be another reason for not getting citation for a lot of literature. So the salient insights from all of these studies is that 2007 onwards, there are more citations. And 2014 onwards, there's more social media attention. There are also more studies on the subject. DOI usage is increasing. So try to post the digital object identifier while sharing these articles on social media, because that will increase recognition. And the referencing practices and social media activities differ between communities. So, so that may account for two different aspects of altmetric attention, depending on your donut is blue or red, so it will be cited or not. And then altmetric scores depend on the audience of social media platforms. Also, not all information that you get on social media is valid information, because the authors of this paper looked at this component fragility index, which you may have heard about. That is, how fragile is your information, especially for an RCT, like what is the number needed to negate this information? And similarly, fragility quotient takes into account the number, sample size of the studies that will be required to nullify the results of the study. And the authors of this paper conducted this experiment on studies in bowel bladder dysfunction, and they found that most of the literature was fragile. So this is true in today's world. A lot of literature is fragile but circulating, and social media gives you similar attention. So here they use Plumx metrics, and if it was an RCT, it had more attention, irrespective of the quality and irrespective of the fragility index. So it suggests that we should probably have more fragility measures in our literature and focus our attention towards more robust articles. So in short, these are the fallacies of the Altmetric attention score. Only the news, blog, policy, peer review, and F1000 components. These are 4 or 5 components that show meaningful correlation or slight correlation to citation count. And the weights may not be applicable to citation. They're just measuring your attention, which may not translate into citation. So in total, today's take home is you may like to have a look at this later, that these are the diverse platforms, and they sample data from different sources and capture different aspects of attention. And AAS or Altmetrics means attention, but not necessarily quality. The outcome of attention depends on who's reading it. There is weak to moderate correlation with citations, but the pitfalls of altmetric attention score needs to be addressed. We need more metrics to synthesize robust indicators of valid research and specific scores to identify citation correlates. And the social media landscape is rapidly evolving with a shift to online reading and virtual learning. So there are new measures which are coming up. There's higher attention, there's more shift to online learning. There may be a boost in altmetric scores, which we haven't looked at yet. And also in the pandemic period, citations are also accruing quickly because a lot of literature coming up, the sudden surge in the number of papers. So the dynamic of citations and altmetrics may be set to change. It's something we would like to look out for in the near future. Thank you.
Dear Latika, thank you very much for your very useful presentation. You encouraged me to learn how to design infographics as a social media editor to improve Twitter impressions. Thank you very much. And I have one question to you. How Ukrainian researchers may benefit from Altmetrics in their research and academic work? What is your opinion?
So in my belief, if you're getting academic attention, Altmetrics, as I said, it may measure your academic attention you're getting from your peers. If you're followed on the social media platforms by more doctors and researchers, then even your Altmetric attention scores mean that people are noticing your research. If I'm conducting research or you're conducting research, you're more likely to cite the papers that you're aware of. So it may eventually, somewhere down the line, translate into citations. Secondly, if you use platforms like Impact Story, then it may sample the social media attention you're getting from various courses and attach it to your CV, which will be very useful in applications, especially if you're a young researcher. You may not have much to brag about except picker metrics like Altmetrics.
Oh, we can use Altmetric attention score to our article in our CV, yes?
Yes.
Especially, this is really important for early career researchers, yes?
Yes, Impact Story is for individuals, while Altmetrics can also provide for your individual articles, but you will have to search those individual articles and pull out the Altmetrics attached to each of them. But Impact Story, it's automatic. You just put in your ID and everything comes together.
Okay, because it can take a lot of time to wait for traditional citations.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Dear colleagues, we encourage you to ask questions to our speakers. You can type them into a chat box on your Zoom panel. And I would like to say that today's webinar is of great interest for all stakeholders of science communication, to authors, reviewers, and editors. And today we should discuss research reporting guidelines, especially for reporting observational researchers, cohort studies. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Arman, who is a highly skilled author, editor of several influential medical journals, and expert reviewer of Scopus database. Please welcome our speaker.
Hello, everyone. So first of all, I wanted to briefly comment on Latika Gupta's presentation, which was well prepared, and it covers several interesting points for researchers, journal editors, and I think that Olena also asked a good question about how research fellows may benefit from this presentation. Latika Gupta covered some related points, but in my opinion, it would be also helpful if Eastern European research fellows set or open their social media accounts and start actively contributing to dissemination of information via social media. So Latika mentioned about Altmetric attention score, AAS, and itself, this metric can be also used in research of PhD candidates, other research fellows. It can help to rank individual articles, journals based on social media attention. So it's uncharted field for research, Altmetrics, and we should encourage our participants to use these metrics extensively for their research. AAS, Altmetrics attention score, is based on several social media metrics let's say, Twitter counts or Facebook mentions. Each of these metrics can be also used in research. It can help research managers to realize which scientific direction is more influential, more useful in terms of societal influence. And also, we should also use tweets. We should count, map tweets to realize which articles are better or more covered on Twitter. Also, our participants who simply tweet or retweet will have much less influence than those who generate tweets, professional tweets, pointing on certain professional points. So not just technically tweeting, but adding ideas, comments, brief comments, microblogging. That activity is really very helpful and is now counted as academic activity influencing the whole field of alternative metrics.
Unfortunately, Twitter is not so popular in Ukraine. We mostly use Facebook than Twitter as a social media platform. What about this?
Yeah, I know. Some participants started using Twitter, but because of our webinars, because of promotion of Twitter, and because of your influence among ULAR, among young rheumatologists. So Facebook is also very useful for academic influence, in terms of academic influence. However, Facebook groups, which are for locked or closed for certain teams, small groups, are much less influential than open Facebook groups. So I encourage all participants to open Facebook teams, Facebook groups for publicly sharing information. And of course, Latika shared her comment that tweets can also attract attention of readers to specific articles. So it's good. Eastern European fellows, authors themselves can tweet on their own articles and attract attention of scholars. That's one part of post-publication promotion. Yeah.
Does it mean that Twitter is the best social media channel for post-publication article promotion?
In terms of AAS algorithm, its way is more compared to Facebook mentions. Facebook is really not so good for academic work because of many confounding reasons. But in hands of good moderators, skilled social media editors, both channels, Twitter and Facebook, may have huge influence.
Does it mean that early career researcher, after getting published, should use Twitter for article promotion as soon as possible? Yes, for getting more citations, traditional citations in the future.
You are absolutely right. Some large publishers encourage authors immediately upon publication of their articles to tweet on their articles and share information. Let's say Springer Nature encourages authors of subscription journals to share shareable link. You probably know about these shareable links. So it's ethical, useful, and it's also useful for attracting citations. More tweets, more chances of having citations. However, Latika also mentioned about discrepancies between social media attention and citations. There is no linear association between tweets, number of tweets, and number of citations. It depends on academic field. So if in academic field, there are numerous social media followers, social media users who tweet and disseminate information, chances of positive correlation between tweets and citations are high. But in many other academic fields like humanities, these association not so certain. So Latika also sharing her chat on chat platform column her impressions. So probably, yeah, she mentions that Twitter helps to connect with other researchers. Of course, it's useful for research collaboration, more useful compared to Facebook. Fully agree with Latika. And she also mentions that you can also conduct studies, analysis based on, yes, you can share your own.
So a popular study model in this pandemic, which I found really interesting, especially initial studies emerging from China, where they analyze the tweets, geosense, that is the location of the tweets, and time-stamped. And then they studied the pattern based on what people are tweeting. Like a lot of people tweet about the symptoms. So they could actually predict the pandemic, the spread or an outbreak in a particular area, that, okay, it's moving, the COVID outbreak is moving to this area. And also regarding fears, there have been various studies of this kind. There are also lately some studies on rheumatology, like how people moved in the pandemic period. Initially, they were talking about the virus, and then they started talking about rheumatology. So the various studies which you can conduct based on that. Social media has a lot of data out there. And the best part is these kind of studies do not require ethical clearance, and you can collaborate with anyone all around the globe to conduct these kind of studies. Like, for example, the Rheumatology Global Alliance is another example of connecting with researchers. The news went viral in the initial pandemic period, and they really did well on Twitter and other social media platforms. And a wide network was created in no time. Within a month, they had so much data on COVID and rheumatic disease. So really in this pandemic, the world is a smaller place and you can connect, and definitely you should be on Twitter. Although every platform has some advantages, but I feel that especially in rheumatology and medicine, a large number of people are there on Twitter, because you need to be on a platform where most people are. Like Facebook may be restricted in some countries, but Twitter is largely present everywhere. So just be on it so that you can meet people.
Yeah, and you are now also working on an interesting study based on Indian rheumatologists' social media activities. So you shall report that study soon, and I am sure you will share information how Indian rheumatologists are active on different social media platforms. Of course, I am sure that as most Indian rheumatologists are fluent in English, and they are excellent at academic English, and they can use and benefit from Twitter various options. So you will share your impressions in your article. So analyze it, and we are looking forward, waiting for a report on activities. Of course, you are also encouraging today, at least it's my opinion, that all participants should actively use Twitter and Facebook for their academic benefits. Without using these open online channels, academics cannot survive and cannot compete with others, let's say Indians, Americans, and other English-speaking research fellows. So it's good to have social media account and use it for academic purposes.
Is it true that some articles even were retracted because of a negative feedback from Twitter? Yes.
Olena, I understood your point. Yes, Twitter is a double-edged sword, and if we share something, let's say articles, followers can spot some minor or major mistakes, and these articles can be retracted. But there is also another phenomenon that even retracted articles are discussed, shared, disseminated, and their altmetric attention score, AAS, can grow even if the article is retracted. So I'd like to thank Latika Gupta for today's excellent brainstorming presentation. And it's also a rational point for all Eastern European, not just Ukrainian, but also Eastern European. Today we also have a fellow from Bulgaria. They should also think how to use social media for their research. Of course, they should also improve their English, should share comments in edited, well-edited, polished English to have more influence. Thank you very much, Latika. And I also I see one point from Professor Marta Jus. She is a very active contributor to this webinar series. She's an influential osteoporosis specialist and rheumatology. She asks us about ResearchGate. Latika, can you respond to this question? What do you think about ResearchGate?
Yeah, so ResearchGate,
Indian context.
Yeah, ResearchGate is more of like information aggregator. So it lists the researchers and their publications, and it's good for linking it to their ORCID ID or to their. It's like an aggregated of data set of your publications, but it's not really for dissemination. Because limited number you can follow. Like Twitter definitely exceeds expectation on that front. That you can follow a large amount of information in a very short period of time. But yes, I agree. We have the same problem in India as in Eastern Europe. So Facebook is much more popular. And in fact, in India, people also do a lot of scientific reading and work on WhatsApp. So when we conducted a survey last year, then people said that WhatsApp was largely used for reading scientific research and disseminating it, which was a surprise. And then Facebook was the second most. The third was, I think, ResearchGate. And we don't follow Twitter much as well, but I myself have really started working on Twitter, and there are a lot of advantages. So I'll suggest you get on it.
Yeah, and ResearchGate is not covered by Altmetrics or Plumex or Impact Story.
Okay, and one more question related to social media channels. Is it true that some journals ask their authors to provide not only ORCID ID, but also Twitter handle?
Question to Latika.
Yes.
Are you going to incorporate Twitter handles in articles of your journal?
Yes.
I mean, American journal and also Indian. You are editor of one American influential journal, editor of another popular journal, Asia Pacific journal. Are you going to push your chief editors to incorporate Twitter handles?
I've been pushing for it, and in fact, yesterday itself we had a meeting where we decided that it's going to finally be there. I've been asking for it for a while, and now in the submissions we're going to ask for the author Twitter handle.
You mean Indian journal?
No, in the American journal, because it's very difficult to disseminate articles. Who will be interested apart from the author? It's actually no one else, really. People do retweet, but if the author, I've seen like with my own articles, sometimes I am just creating a tweet that this study found this, and there are no retweets. But if I say we found this, happy to share the results of our studies, sometimes there are 20 retweets because your friends tweet. So it's always good to have the authors on board. Also, it can promote discussions. So if someone has some questions on the paper, they can post as comments, and that really adds weight to your Altmetric scores, and people discuss it in depth. So this is something which should definitely be incorporated. So Annals of Rheumatic Disease is doing it. Few other journals are doing it as of
Academic
now.
Academic medicine is good at incorporating Twitter handles. And excellent. So I will follow articles in your journal. Not sure that it's good to have for subscription journals, but we'll see. Twitter is open channel, so it's good to have Twitter handles in open access journals. But no,
Yes.
I am sure that with Plan S next year, most journals will be open access, will have open access model, and using Twitter handles, promoting post-pub articles using Twitter handles it's an excellent option. And thank you. I am sure that today we also have an editor of proceedings of Shevchenko Scientific Society, Professor Oksana Zaitchkivska, and it's also a message to her and to their social media editor of that journal to incorporate, ask all authors register with Twitter and use Twitter handle. Thank you very much. Thank you for a barrage of questions today.
Thank you very much, Latika.
Thank you. Stay healthy. So, Olena, my turn?
Yes, yes.
So let me then share screen with you.
Yes, you have started screen sharing. Open your presentation.
Okay, so may I start with traditional citation-based metrics?
If you would like, of course.
Okay,
It
because
will be logical, yes.
Definitely. So, dear colleagues, friends, dear moderator, evaluator of today's webinar, Professor Vasil Lonchina, Professor Oksana Zaitchkivska, Professor Valentina Chopyak. Thank you for this unique opportunity to participate, to lecture at this webinar and join this wonderful team of fellows who would like to update and upgrade their knowledge in the field of advanced scientific editing and scientific writing. We discussed alternative metrics. Now I am going to discuss traditional citation metrics, author metrics, and also journal metrics. So I'm editor of Rheumatology journals and also index journals. So my main field of interest in terms of journals is, of course, a cohort of rheumatology journals. And there are numerous rheumatology journals. Some of them are indexed by Web of Science, Scopus, and have impact indicators, reputable impact indicators like journal impact factor, 2-year journal impact factor, or site score from Scopus. So these journals are in advantage position, but there are also some emerging rheumatology journals without impact indicators, without coverage by Web of Science, by Scopus, and I am really concerned with fate of these non-index journals. Who is going to support these journals? Who is going to contribute to these journals? Because nowadays, journal impact factor or site score are real currencies for journal publishing. Without these journal metrics, impossible to promote and attract good authors. So you probably are aware that the whole story of citations dates back to Second World War and aftermath of Second World War. American researchers, American specialists who founded US Armed Forces Medical Library, it's now called National Library of Medicine, they were concerned with competition between different countries, particularly former Soviet Union, and they wanted to have a platform or a system to track use of different journals in America and journals primarily in USSR. And after the Second World War, they decided to count, to process references of all articles in an organized way and calculate different metrics. So Eugene Garfield, who by some deserves Nobel Prize for his invention of this citation counting system, he established Institute for Scientific Information, Thomson Reuters, and nowadays it's called Clarivate Analytics with different databases. Eugene Garfield was the initiator and inventor of the most popular, and it is still most popular impact metric, journal impact metric, called journal impact factor. So he was specialist with interest in document processing, and he established one of the initial computer in Institute of Scientific Information, though he was also linguist himself, but he decided to expand his interest, and he established large database, which then developed into a huge Institute of Scientific Information. And nowadays we have several databases, highly reputable databases. And at that time, when he established in 1955, he established the Institute of Scientific Information for processing information, reference for processing all journals, and deciding which journals are more important. At that time, he found out that Nature and Science were the two most influential journals in the world. Of course, we know that there are also other European or Eastern European journals that were famous, very popular at that time, but Nature and Science were journals disseminated widely. Their circulation was huge, and this is why they reached authors and readers all over the world, and their influence was partly more compared to European and Eastern European other journals because of dissemination. When Eugene Garfield established his institute and he invented or proposed journal impact factor, he realized that that impact factor will be misused by research evaluators and journal editors. His initial idea was to have an impact metric to distinguish highly popular, hugely popular, influential journals for different libraries, because he also proposed these main points in Bibliometrics. If there is limited funding, libraries or aggregators of information should be selective towards journals, periodicals, and books and other sources of information. They should archive, aggregate information from highly, widely used and hugely popular journals. So the main point, and this point is still useful for most countries. If you are going to have aggregator of information, research repository, you should primarily cover journals like Nature, Science, PLOS ONE, BMJ1, mostly English journals with huge influence. So, but there is also one second point. If a journal publishes widely read, highly cited articles, quality of these journals instantly increases without even input of journal editors, because higher use, higher citation impact, more attraction for readers and authors, and more good authors target these journals. third point of bibliometrics, and these points are based on Eugene Garfield's ideas, slightly modified over time. So if articles are widely read, widely discussed, and cited, they influence science growth. Articles in reputable journals like Nature, Lancet, BMJ, New England Journal of Medicine, if these articles in this journal cite other articles, reputation of these cited articles increases. But there is no any direct association between journal impact factor and quality of individual articles in these journals. Let's say Nature sometimes publishes rubbish, so-called rubbish articles, which erroneous articles, which then are criticized by readers and retracted because of serious mistakes or erroneous statistics or some other reasons. So there is no direct correlation between impact factor, high impact factor, and quality of individual articles. Based on main points suggested by Eugene Garfield, who is founder of Bibliometrics and also Scientometrics, journals with high influence are covered by some databases. And of course, nowadays we have two highly reputable databases. Databases of Web of Science, primarily Science Citation Index Expanded, and Scopus database. These are two main pillars of bibliometrics nowadays. But of course, Eugene Garfield was concerned with citations of citation databases or abstract databases of Web of Science. Primarily, Science Citation Index Expanded, Social Science Citation Index, Current Contents, and Arts and Humanities Citation Index. Nowadays, we also have Book Citation Index, also a database of Web of Science, but in terms of citations, influence of Book Citation Index, much less. We also know, and it's something new, because in 2005, physicist Hersh published his notorious Hersh Index. And this index is now used for evaluating influence of individual authors with certain articles and citations. When he proposed his Hersh Index, he proposed to promote those authors who published at least 10 articles, who published 10 articles, and each of these 10 articles, if cited at least 10 times, promote to the level of associate professor. Those who published 18 articles and each of these articles is cited at least 18 times, promote to the level of professor, primarily in the field of physics. And of course, other types of promotions based on published articles and their citations. So Hersh Index is bidirectional metric. It is based on number of articles and number of citations. Young scientists who wish to increase their Hersh Index, they should publish more. If they publish more, chances of increasing Hersh Index also increase. So we now know that Hersh Index is important for academic promotion, for academic titles, various academic posts. but we also should know about some of these limitations of Hersh Index. So first of all, let me discuss few things about importance of this article. Based on Scopus information, Scopus citation tracking, this article is cited more than 5,000 times since 2005. It's huge number and huge influence of this article in the whole field of bibliometrics and scientometrics. So we now use Hersh Index for ranking and evaluating progress of individual authors, but we also use Hersh Index for ranking academic activity of whole countries based on Scimago journal and country rank platform. We can also use Hersh Index for calculating or quantifying importance of certain scientific topics. So it has some good uses as well. And it's easy to understand meaning of Hersh Index. If it is easy understandable, it has huge influence. Jörg Hersh himself, physicist, and here you can see his profile on Scopus. His Hersh Index is 58. So it means that he published 58 articles, each of which is cited at least 58 times in Scopus. In the same way, we can calculate Hersh Index based on Google Scholar platform, Web of Science platform, and other citation counting platforms. So we know that Scopus is abstract and citation tracking database. And it is largest database, bibliographic database, which is why we should use Scopus for various scientometric purposes, for research evaluation, for research management, and for choosing scientific direction for our PhD fellows. Journal editors also may use Hersh Index, let's say, to understand how influential is their journal. So I'll show you a bit later. Now, about that notorious article, we can analyze citations to this article, Hersh article, and based on this analysis, we see that from 2005 till 2019, number of citations increases annually. So we see slight decrease on this graph in 2020, but it's just preliminary data. I am sure that in 2020, number of citations to this article will grow up to 600 annually. So which countries are concerned with Hersh Index and cite this article? Of course, authors from US, authors from China, because Chinese authors are also active in online research, in scientometrics. So in the time of pandemics, I'm sure that scientometrics and altmetrics, their influence will grow. Also, third most important country within the frames of this Hersh Index article is Spain, because in Spain we have Scimago laboratory. It's one of the influential citation tracking processing institution laboratory, which runs Scimago journal and country rank. It's free platform based on Scopus data, and probably because of the influence of Scimago, Spain is third most important country in terms of citations. So which journals cover Hersh Index article? Top scientific journal is Scientometrics, Springer Nature journal, and these are a journal published 560 articles citing York Hersh notorious article. So you see, the same way PhD candidates can use the same citation analysis for articles highly influential in their field of interest. So I use this example of York Hersh article to share example with PhD candidates, research managers, and authors who are going to analyze highly influential articles. So it's also important to analyze citations, which citations are accumulating in our field of interest. Here is an easy, understandable example of calculating Hersh Index based on Scopus data. It's an old Hersh Index of past president of World Association of Medical Editors, Farrokh Habibzadeh from Shiraz, Iran, and he is one of the most influential statisticians, most influential journal editors. He is consultant of Lancet and author of several good articles on bibliometrics, on journal editing, publication ethics. So you can see that his Hersh Index equals to 6. So we should rank his articles in Scopus database based on descending order of citation. So you see top cited articles attracted 17, 15, 10 articles, and seventh article in this rank attracted just 6 citations. So we say that Farrokh Habibzadeh's Hersh Index is equals to 6. He published 6 articles, each of which is cited at least 6 times. So we can use Hersh Index to rank different countries. You see that top country, of course, is US with Hersh Index of more than 2,300. So US published in Scopus 2,386 articles, each of which is cited at least 2,386 times. So you see also descending order of countries based on Hersh Index. And these data available freely from Scimago Journal and Country Rank. We may use Hersh Index also to rank different journals in certain field of science. Let's say here is an example of veterinary. Whole veterinary science can be ranked. There are, based on Scimago Journal and Country Rank data, there are around 200 journals indexed by Scopus with impact metrics, and you see that top 3 journals in this field have Hersh Index more than above 100. So Vaccine is top journal with 175 articles, each of which is cited at least 175 times. Now, we can also narrow our field of interest and find out and look specifically at veterinary science journals in certain countries. Let's say in Poland. In Poland, we have just 5 journals indexed by Scopus and with Scopus-based metrics covered by Scimago Journal and Country Rank. And in Poland, Polish Journal of Veterinary Sciences is most influential journal with Hersh Index equals 26. So now you understand what does it mean. And these data are freely available from Scimago, journal, and country rank. This platform is used by authors to find target journal for their research. I'm sure that in Eastern Europe, many Polish journals indexed by Scopus, Medline, Web of Science, specialist databases are well known and well targeted by other Eastern European authors. Here is another example of journal ranking. Journals coming from Ukraine, and we see that there are 65 journals. Again, these journals are ranked based, in this particular example, they are ranked based on Scimago journal rank, and again in descending order. But we can also rank these journals based on Hersh Index. The highest Hersh Index is for geometry journal, open access journal. So this platform can be used by authors to find relevant target for their good article. So I mentioned about Hersh Index for evaluating influence of different journals. So one of the first articles in this field analyzed Hersh Index of rheumatology journals. At that time, there were just 30 indexed rheumatology journals, 29 journals, and simple correlation analysis showed that there is almost linear association between Hersh Index and total citations, Hersh Index and 2-year impact factor, Hersh Index 5-year impact factor. So, and Hersh Index can be also viewed as alternative to journal impact factor. So if you know Hersh Index from Scopus or Web of Science database, you can imagine how that journal is influential. If Hersh Index of a journal is high, it means the journal publishes more influential articles, and more influential articles are those forming a peak of evidence-based pyramid. So randomized control trials, systematic reviews, narrative reviews with high citations, all these influence Hersh Index. And of course, with time, Hersh Index of a journal, of an individual, of a country increases because these contributors publish more and chances of attracting more citations increase with time. But of course, we should not compare beauties, let's say Palace of Versailles and Nakhshe Jahan Square in Isfahan in Iran. So these are beauties of 17th century, constructed and planned by King Ludovic in France and Shah Abbas the First. Both were influential rulers, both left trace, and both had huge impact, historic impact. But we cannot compare these their influence based on what they're planned, what they're constructed. So we should, in our field, we also should not compare impact, citation impact in different academic fields. Let's say we cannot compare rheumatology with veterinary science. We can compare only journals within rheumatology and separately journals within veterinary science. Do not compare uncomparable things. Clear? So now about limitations of Hersh Index. Of course, those with few articles cannot have huge influence. To have more influence, authors should publish more. Hersh Index does not consider place of co-author in different articles. So if authors publish numerous multi-authored articles, their Hersh Index, of course, will be higher because a number of authors promote these articles, attract citations, and her chances of increasing Hersh Index increase. So it's also a trick. If you wish to increase your Hersh Index, you should publish, you should become a member of author groups publishing highly influential articles. And in my opinion, the highly influential articles are practice recommendations, randomized control trials, and systematic reviews. So participants of today's webinar, those who wish to increase their Hersh Index should join prolific author group, ideally, and publish more with under their guidance or with their help to have more influence. But there are also some differences. Let's say, again, it depends on discipline. If you publish in chemistry, your influence will be much higher compared to linguistics or humanities. So it depends on academic discipline, how your influence increases. Hersh Index also ignores highly cited articles. So an author can have just one highly cited article, but the rest of his or her articles are not influential. And Hersh Index is small, but it doesn't mean that that author is not influential, because even one article can be highly influential and increase influence of one article. Here is a profile of Professor Rostislav Stoica. I just refer to this good example because it's relevant to Eastern Europe. So we can analyze where this author published, how he published. Of course, we see that he published more than 200 articles. Hersh Index is 20, and in most of his articles he has several co-authors. So it's good to have several co-authors. If you publish a lot of articles as solo author, you diminish chances of increasing your Hersh Index. So it means that authors in academic groups may have more influence than those solo authors, like mathematicians, like humanitarians who publish just solo authored articles. So we can also use Scopus platform to evaluate individual articles, choose our PhD supervisors. I recently also proposed Professor Olena Zimba as a supervisor of PhD candidates based on her contributions, based on her profile in Scopus. So Scopus is growing in terms of evaluating researchers, research managers, and is nowadays it's used for also academic hiring. So Scopus also allows us to analyze affiliation. Good point. So for young novice authors, if you publish articles, please clearly mention your affiliation. Nowadays, Scopus tag these affiliations with Scopus affiliation ID, like ORCID ID, like digital object identifier. It's something new. Now, analyzing Danilo Halitsky, I see that your fellows publish more in 5 journals, predominantly in 5 journals, and I see that some of these journals, like Pharmacia or Biopolymers and Cell, are highly influential in terms of number of articles published from Ukraine. So, and it's good to know where your colleagues from the same the university publish. So we also know that 1/3 of articles coming from Danila Halitsky are those related to medicine, but there are also biochemistry. So I know that medical chemistry specialists are influential in terms of publication activity. And we also have many other specialists contributing to publication activity of this university. So Scopus and publication and citation activity metrics are nowadays can be also calculated based on analyzing Scopus database. So how we are comparing the individual authors? Let's suppose that 3 individuals have the same Hersh index, around 50. You see 3 individuals with the same Hersh index. They published 50 articles, each of which is cited at least 50 times. But is there difference? Is there in terms of influence of these authors? For that, we have excessive index, E-index, proposed by Chinese scientists. So we should also pay attention not just to Hersh index, but also to total citations. Here you see that 3rd author with Hersh index 50 has 3 to 5 times more citations than his competitors with Hersh indexes 51. So we should count not just Hersh index, but also total citations to all articles of these authors. There are some authors who published handful of articles, but some of these articles are hugely influential. You all know from biochemistry story of Oliver Lowry, his phenol reagent for quantifying proteins in biological samples, in fluids, biological fluids. His article was published in 1951, and this article in the Journal of Biological Chemistry has been cited more than 200,000 times. Huge influence based just on one article. Of course, historically, influence of this article is of this author, Professor Lowry, is 90, but he is famous because of his top cited methodology articles. Again, message for all novice authors. If you wish to increase your influence, you may consider proposing methodology article, influential article, something new methodology, which will be also highly cited. Some journals, I know at least one journal, let's say Platelets Journal by Informa Healthcare or Taylor Francis, Platelets Journal, they started publishing methodology column, and influence of the whole journal increased because of these methodology articles. So again, message to Eastern European journal editors, please consider opening methodology sections in your journals and publishing methodology articles. It is relevant to laboratory science, to medical chemistry, and other laboratory science journals. Now, a few words about Scimago journal and country rank. Not all citations to your articles are equal. Citations coming from top journals, let's say Science, Nature, Lancet, or Nature Reviews, Rheumatology, Nature Reviews, Cardiology, etc. These citations are highly influential, and they add weight, importance to your articles. If they are attractive to authors from publishing in Nature, Science, and other top scientific journals, influence of your articles and importance of your articles also increases. So try to make your articles attractive to authors from publishing in top journals. This year, Citation introduced new, Scopus introduced new citation metrics based on 4-year publication window. And it's important to know that they nowadays, Scopus considers different types of articles in numerator and denominator. So they consider research articles, review articles, conference papers, book chapters in both citations part and documents part. So 4-year window. Why they decided to choose 4-year window? Because it's difficult to manipulate. So journal editors nowadays cannot manipulate or increase their cite score. It's quite difficult. Whereas if citation window is 2-year or 3-year, chances of manipulation by journal editors increase. We can use citation cite score to rank individual journals. Let's say in rheumatology, to compare journals within rheumatology based on their cite score. You see that top scientific journal has cite score of 26. So it means that on average, article published in this journal is cited 26 times annually within 4-year window. So we can also use cite score to rank, let's say, in the surgery field. The same Scopus database allows us to rank journals in other disciplines, in veterinary science, in humanities. So we see that there are differences. Annals of Surgery is top cited journal with top cite score equal 15, less than in the field of rheumatology. It depends on activity of authors, number of journals, and differences in citation patterns. We can use Scopus. Scopus is useful for comparing journals, and as journal editor, I also use this platform to compare different journals. You see now, I compare Polish Journal of Veterinary Sciences with Journal of Veterinary Research, 2 Polish journals in the field of veterinary science. And I see that both are promising journals in terms of citations because their citation score, cite score is increasing. There is a trend telling us about increase of citations. We also use not just cite score, but also total scores, total citations. So the same, like with individual authors, the same with journals. We should use not just one metric like cite score, but also other citation metrics, like total citations within a year. Good journal in the field of veterinary research. And here is example why we need all these different metrics and alternative metrics as well. Because we can evaluate journal, we can use these metrics to target this journal if we have relevant article related to veterinary science. And we should pay attention to 2-year impact factor, 5-year impact factor coming from Web of Science, and other metrics, let's say Salmago journal and country rank. We can also rely on downloadability of this journal, how many articles are downloaded, and social media attention. So Altmetrics is nowadays incorporated in journal online platforms and widely used for promotion and for attracting good authors. Of course, good authors pay attention to these type of metrics. But we should also remember about sources of biases of citations. There was a good article published in Learned Publishing Journal back in 2010. And at that time, the author, Frank Thorsten Krell, director of Denver Museum, he analyzed citations in America and in other journals across scientific disciplines, and he noticed that there are some biased citations, like self-citations. We know that it's nowadays considered unethical if we exceedingly cite our own articles, or if journal exceedingly cites journal cites own articles published in the same journal. So try to diversify citations, try to cite different references to avoid claims of unethical self-citations. Also, citations of friendly colleagues. We know that all Americans prefer, and it's based on this particular article, that American or English-speaking authors prefer to cite English articles because they read and understand English articles. They rarely or never read non-English or Spanish, French articles, Slavic articles. And it's also a message to non-Anglophone journals, non-Anglophone authors. They should publish in good English to attract attention of American or English authors who have established citation behavior, citation culture. So your articles and our articles should be primarily attractive to authors with established citation patterns, citation behavior. Of course, Americans cite more English articles. Slavic authors also tend to cite Slavic articles. Brazilian authors tend to cite Brazilian journals. And of course, if article is easily accessible with DOI, easily, widely visible, chances of citations are also high. To some extent, it's also considered as biased citation. So only 20% of articles cited by papers are read by citing authors, so be very careful. If you cite an article, please, especially it's a message to PhD candidates, read whole articles and then cite this article. References contain some technical mistakes, and it can also result in biased citations, biased scientometrics. So try to be punctual, try to be accurate with your references. And two main messages. I simply quote Frank Thorsten Krell. It is problematic to use journal-targeted metrics such as impact factors to judge quality of single authors. So we should refrain from using journal impact factors to evaluate quality of individual articles and quality of research work by individual authors. And second important point, it is duty of a responsible editor to promote articles, to promote their journal and increase quality of individual articles and whole journal. What editors should do and how authors should target journals. First of all, they should share information about their articles through ResearchGate, Twitter, Facebook, and other sources, platforms. It's easy for journal editors to publish EPUB ahead of print, then wait to collect all articles and publish whole issue. Journal editors should increase number of issues to increase rapid share information. And Latika today mentioned that articles published in first issues of a year are well promoted and attract more attention, more tweets. The same with citations. Articles published in early issues of a year attract more citations and have more influence than articles published later in a year or at the end of year in final issues of a journal. in a volume. So I should refer to my experience with Iranian fellows whom I supported for a decade, and I helped them to promote their articles, journals, and get indexed by Scopus, Web of Science. And you see some good examples. These journals, I was involved initially back in 2009 in establishing or promoting these journals. Both are with impact, with Web of Science coverage, Scopus indexing, and you see how they decided to promote. Initially, they published articles in issues, but then starting from 2016, they moved to annual publishing without any issue, just annual publishing. Articles are published immediately upon acceptance and proofreading and copy editing. The same with story with these two journals, good journals, English journals, indexed by most prestigious databases. There is also one impact metric of a journal, immediacy index. You know that this year, because of COVID-19 pandemic, most journals increased their immediacy index. Citations given to a journal within the same year of publication. So because of COVID-19, because of publishing this type of articles and attracting a lot of citations, some journals, like top journals like Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, increased immediacy index because their articles attracted scores, citations immediately within few weeks, few months. So immediacy index is important, and it's covered by Web of Science platform. Slide just to show how different metrics are differ in terms of time frame. Of course, you know about 2-year impact factor. Now you know about immediacy index. So journals in pharmacology, pharmacy, chemistry, again, because of their citation patterns, have a lot of citations because of their number of citing authors is high. But there are also some other metrics. So immediacy index of general medical journals is more compared to specialist journals like rheumatology journals. Lancet, on average, publish articles which are cited around 11 times. In rheumatology, only 2 times within a year. So why we need thematic issues, reviews? Because these type of articles increase influence of a journal, influence of individual articles, and of course, review articles published in specialist issues, specialist journals, reviews, narrative reviews or systematic reviews in top journals or index journals attract a lot of citations. Emerging journals, Eastern European journals, with ambitions to get indexed by Scopus, Web of Science, should publish, again, review articles attractive for readers, because the main function of journals is to attract readers and authors. Reviews, it's a classical slide, and this slide tells us that review articles are narrative review articles are highly cited, more cited compared to normal articles or original research articles. Here's how journal impact factor is calculated. Old formula, so 2-year time frame. So we know that there are now 13,000 journals and covered by Web of Science, and these numerator is important for journal impact factor. Why we should also know about denominator. So journal editors who wish to increase their impact factor, they publish more editorials, more letters, news articles, which are not counted by denominator. So it's mathematics, it's just arithmetic. There are some limitations, so we should know about limitations of two-year journal impact factor. 1 or 2 articles in a journal may increase citation impact of the whole journal. So, and this is why good journals, let's say Springer, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis journals, they often publish narrative reviews by good authors to attract citations and increase their journal impact factor. It's a trick for journal editors. The same trick can be used by Eastern European journal editors if they are sure that their authors will cite these review articles. So to cite, they should publish more English review articles, not just Slavic articles, but English. So, and again, journal impact metrics differ across different disciplines. Fundamental or biochemistry, chemistry journals have more influence compared to mathematics. Now, about San Francisco statement on research assessment, or Declaration on Research Assessment, DORA. This declaration is important, and I encourage all researchers, publishers, editors to familiarize with each point, all points of this declaration, and do not use two-year impact factor to evaluate quality of individual articles. Authors should be very careful what they cite. Main message is to cite articles if they are aware of all points within that article. So instead of citing secondary articles, authors should cite primary articles. Instead of citing review articles, it's better to cite primary research article. IGEN factor is similar to Scimago journal and country rank, and again based on weight of citation metrics. Citations from Lancet, Nature, Science to our articles increase our impact weight of our articles. And of course, again, general medical journals have more influence because journals like Lancet and New England Journal of Medicine attract more citations from top journals like Science, Nature, compared to specialist journals. And there is also a point about citation age. The same with Twitter. Articles are highly tweeted within just few days, and number of tweets decreases. The same with citations. Influential articles are cited within few weeks, few months, and or few years, and then their citation counts decreases. We should also use or pay attention to F1000, faculty 1000. The idea was to select articles and recommend these articles as recommended, must-read, and exceptional. So again, semi-quantitative system of evaluating quality, so-called quality of articles, based on opinion of 1,000 experts. Initially it was 1,000, nowadays it's more, and they have their own database of journals evaluated and widely promoted. And you see that even PubMed platform promotes these articles, their references in Faculty 1000 platform. How we as editors promote, and this is also important to our authors, how we increase impact. We increase impact by publishing articles highly relevant to scope of our journal interests. Otherwise, no one will read our articles. Let's say if it is Rheumatology journal and we will publish articles of huge interest to cardiologists, citation rate of our journal will not increase. The same with immunology. If immunology journal publishes articles related to humanities citation, it's wrong and not contributing to citation scores. We should analyze submissions regularly. We should write editorials, and it's also good for emerging journals also to write editorials, publish more editorials. And we should also look for highly influential or so-called gold authors and good reviewers, because good reviewers are considered as gatekeepers. They can recommend rejections of poor research, non-influential research, and we often rely on recommendations of our reviewers. And at the end, I'd like to emphasize just two main points. There are traditional citation metrics for comparing journals and authors within certain field of science, rheumatology, cardiology, immunology, but we cannot compare author in rheumatology with an author in cardiology. We compare journals and authors within one specific field of science. And second point, authors, reviewers, editors should be aware of impact metrics, and they should follow impact citation reports on different platforms, Scopus or Scimago Journal and Country Rank, and Web of Science. And of course, my classic photos from Birmingham. I took these photos just to show how conservative part of Britain lives side by side with traditional Britain. The same, we have traditional metrics and new emerging metrics, and I am sure soon we will have more influence of alternative metrics, which complement traditional citation metrics. And of course, again, you see City Center of Birmingham or City Library, Old Library. It's again a classic photo, and you're probably aware of British Library, the largest library, like Library of US Congress. Both libraries accumulate journals, books, and these are hubs of scientific information. And inside of British Library, you see scholars. It's old photo. Nowadays, you cannot see. It's difficult to see scholars working, reading in such an environment. But just to impress you with the influence of scholarly information, the historic influence of I present this photo. So any questions, comments up to this point?
Armen, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. Now our participants know everything. Thanks about citations, almost everything. Thanks to your excellent presentation. And I have one question to you. Could you summarize and suggest some life hacks specifically for Ukrainian authors, how to increase their Hersh Index? Take-home message. Okay. What should we do?
Yeah, like in other Eastern European countries, Hersh indexes of individual authors are low in Eastern Europe, and it's because of several reasons. First of all, number of journals from Eastern Europe indexed by Scopus, Web of Science, is low. So journal editors should be concerned with influence of their journals and should index with Scopus. And I'm ready to help them to upgrade their journals and get indexed by Scopus. It's one initial step. The second important step is to publish in English, in good English, in local Eastern European journals or in American or Western journals. And finally, they should publish influential articles in terms of field of science. If they choose field of interest without societal interest, without huge global influence, Hersh Index will be low. So research managers may help novice researchers to choose influential or trendy field of science. But of course, we should have some exceptions, like arts and humanities. For this field, citation scores, Hersh Index, not so important. In the field of mathematics, Hersh Index, again, not so important compared to chemistry, immunology. For immunologists, Hersh Index is quite important. So I encourage immunologists to publish more in English journals, articles of high importance. Let's say this year we've had numerous COVID-19 articles related to immunology, autoimmunity, and my own article and your own article, Rena, also highly cited. Within 1 year, cited more than 50 times because it relates to immunology, autoimmunity. So, and it will contribute to your and my Hersh Index. So usually Hersh Index increases by 1 annually. It means that if normal, so-called normal researcher publishes at least 1 article annually, chances of increasing Hersh Index by 1 also increase. So they should simply know how these metrics are calculated, why we should look at Hersh indexes based on Scopus, Web of Science, Google Scholar, and for Eastern European, it's also important, but because most of their articles are covered by Google Scholar and not covered by Scopus and Web of Science. And to have fair metric Hersh Index, we should combine information from different databases. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And your second presentation is very important because it is about research reporting guidelines on reporting of cohort studies, observational study. This topic is especially important for early career researchers in Ukraine. And we are waiting for your next presentation.
Thank you, and I hope that there will be also some questions. Okay, so this presentation is particularly important to our newcomers, new participants, or those who are going to publish articles free of plagiarism, free of copying, based on all ethical standards. Standards related to authorship, disclosure, based on comprehensive coverage of literature, and also to those who want to publish citable, so-called citable articles. I divided my main aim into 3 parts. First, I will discuss research reporting guidelines, give you hints or tips on bibliographic searches, which databases are important to authors across different academic disciplines, discuss few new points about authorship disclosures or author contributorship disclosures, conflicts of interest, why it's important, and citations. Why citations are important to distinguish importance of different types of articles. Now, association initiatives concerning research reporting. International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and I encourage all Eastern European journal editors to register their journal on platform of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and you will see how it's easy. So I also encourage all Eastern European journal editors to join Council of Science Editors, US-based association, also Committee on Publication Ethics, UK-based Editors Association with around 13,000 members. WAMI Equator Network, important for guidance on research and publication ethics. Equator Network is important because of research reporting standards, primarily for biomedical, veterinary scientists. And DORA, San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, is important because it tells us what we should cite and how we should use citation metrics and alternative metrics to evaluate our research of our competitors, and promote scientists. There are two important recommendations. First of all, white paper, Council of Science Editors white paper on promoting integrity, updated in 2018, and this year also few updates were introduced. And the most important and annually updated guidelines or recommendations come from International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. These recommendations can be used by biomedical specialists and non-medical specialists as well, veterinary scientists, surgeons, psychologists, sociologists, or authors working or doing research at the interface of different sciences, academic disciplines. So we should know about authorship criteria. Those who list their names should share substantive contribution, should revise journal articles, should approve articles for manuscripts for submission, and they should also agree to be responsible for all aspects. Let's say if you put statistician as a co-author, this statistician should understand the whole concept of your paper and be responsible for not just statistics, but also for justification, for hypotheses, for discussion and selection of references, and be responsible for ethical writing free of any copying. So we also know about predatory journals, poor journals. We should know about statistics. We should no need to use statistics just as a decoration for your research articles. Statistics is just mathematics, but most important thing is clinical or scientific meaning of your research. You can have huge, big article with numerous statistical analysis, but without any clinical use. So if you use, let's say, p-value, and this p-value not accompanied by 95% confidence interval, your research can be criticized. So we should also know about Open Researcher and Contributor ID, pronounced ORCID ID. So I hope that all participants, all followers of our webinar series have ORCID IDs, and these ORCID IDs are important for increasing visibility of your research. And also references, also one of the most important points of recommendations for authors worldwide. References should be selected from bibliographic databases or from platforms like PubMed, Dimensions, Google Scholar. We know where to find recommendations and where to download conflict of interest form. These forms are used nowadays by most journals. Please ask your journal editors to incorporate or use conflict of interest forms for structured conflict of interest disclosures of their authors. Now, important message to all Eastern European journal editors. Please go to International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, find out this link, journal stating that they follow recommendations of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and submit information about your journal. By submitting, you claim that your journal is ethical and follows all recommendations of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. I am involved in promotion and the running of Central Asian Journal of Medical Hypothesis and Ethics, and this journal is now covered by your Open Science platform, Open Science in Ukraine platform, low cost and very influential, widely globally visible platform. And this journal also claims to follow all ethical rules. It was recently submitted, and now visibility of this journal also increases. But unfortunately, I still cannot see information about most Eastern European or Ukrainian journal, even those journals which we promote and help. So, you probably, yeah. Now, about Sarajevo Declaration. This declaration was published in 2016, and now it's promoted by most Eastern European journals. The main message is to have ORCID ID for all authors. Your journal editors should also have ORCID IDs. ORCID IDs should increase visibility of individual authors, but there is also another initiative which was started in 2014, and an article published in 2018 in one of the top journals with impact factor around 2, Leonid Publishing. This article suggested to use contributor role taxonomy, or so-called credit taxonomy. Busy journals, immunology, chemistry journals, they use this system to conceptualize, to divide contributions of individual authors based on their influence on with ideas, methodology, statistics, formal analysis, resources, funding. So not all authors in an article contribute equally. This is why the system, so-called credit, helps to divide contributions of each co-author and tell readers about individual contributions, writing, editing. Of course, we now have influence of numerous commercial editing services. These are quite different. These are not authorship contributions, but contributions deserving acknowledgements separate. So credit disclosures are nowadays used by several important or top scientific journals. Now about reviews. We all should learn how to write review articles. These articles are favored by publishers, and all Eastern European journals with huge influence should think about publishing review articles of invited authors. I know numerous top scientific journals publishing influential reviews and attracting a lot of tweets, Facebook mentions, other social media attention, and citations. And of course, PhD candidates should start their dissertation by preparing systematic review or narrative review with systematic or comprehensive search strategy. So these two highlighted in red parts are important. So we should encourage Eastern European or Ukrainian authors to publish more review articles with narrative, with systematic search approaches based on searches through Scopus, Web of Science, Medline or platform or PubMed platform, and specialist databases like Global Health for public health specialists, Agricola for veterinary and agriculture specialists, and other specialist databases. But there is also qualitative systematic review. These type of articles are also influential, but most of these articles suffer because of copying methods part from previous articles. Equator Network suggests, publishes recommendations, standards, and there are more than 400 standards. One of the most promoted is Prisma standard for systematic reviews. Most journals require their authors of systematic reviews to adhere to Prisma standard. Of course, when you write systematic review, you should understand that initially you collect thousands of articles from Scopus, Web of Science, PubMed, and then you exclude or rule out or remove articles from your pool of articles, and at the end you just have a handful of articles, 10, 20, 30, but no more. If you have more, it means that scope of your interest is uncertain. But on the contrary, if you have just 1, 2 articles in this final part of included articles, it means that there is something wrong. This field not properly developed. There are not many evidence-based articles, and there is simply no need to analyze or synthesize evidence. Most systematic reviews, particularly coming from China, generated by computers, have huge mistakes or harshly criticized because of redundancies. So this is why we should base our reviews on comprehensive searches, and we need open access to various bibliographic databases. Research managers, if you have PhD candidates, provide them with full access to Scopus, Web of Science, PubMed, and specialist databases, or guide them which databases are useful. If you are going to write systematic review, you should first register protocol or plan of your systematic review with Prospero or prospective register of systematic reviews. It's York University platform. Please register and then submit your systematic review with or without quantitative analysis or meta-analysis to journals. Titles of reviews, particularly review articles. Please incorporate all keywords, most important keywords in title, and explore these keywords in abstracts and also whole text. Titles like diseases like COVID-19 are influential if written by influential authors. But novice authors with just few months or few years experience in this disease cannot publish this type of articles. It's an example of Lancet series reviews, and you see that Cochrane library and Medline searches were conducted, and these type of articles are hugely influenced because they are published by Lancet. Other approaches are used or employed by specialist journals, and specialist journals also encourage searches by specialist databases like CINAHL for nurses, like Sport Discus, rehabilitation and sport science specialists. Titles differ based on article type. For research articles or original research papers, we have declarative articles, whereas for review articles, we have interrogative, question type titles. Now, if you put question mark in a title of your review, you increase influence of your articles. No need to use geographic reference in titles of your articles, review, or even original research papers. Why? Because you decrease attention of global audience towards your article. How we structure and how you should structure your review articles. First of all, you should have structured abstract divided into methods, results, and conclusion. Methods, introduction, methods, results, and discussion and conclusion. So the same structure, similar to structure of your main text. You should use keywords from specialist vocabulary. You should have properly formulated introduction, justifying novelty of your review article, and aim. Each review article overview should contain aim, novel aim, and you should divide your review into several subsections. If you write review article without dividing into subsections, it's a nightmare. It will create a lot of problems. You will lose structure. You will lose follow of your thoughts in review article. So it's better to have subsections of your review articles. We should have searches through multidisciplinary databases, Scopus, Web of Science, and specialist databases like PsycInfo, Global Health, CINAHL, or Embase for chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacy, pharmacology, toxicology specialists. Now, you probably know about Cochrane database of systematic reviews with more than 15,000 systematic reviews. So the latest review, it's database and also journal covered by PubMed platform. The latest is about, I will show you here, about COVID-19 and CT. So we should pay attention primarily to author's conclusion in Cochrane, this type of review, systematic reviews. And this specific conclusion tells us that CT, lung CT, has high sensitivity towards discovering ground glass opacity, but not high specificity, because the same findings can be found in patients with rheumatic diseases with lung affection without COVID-19. It's an example. So we should also know, all biomedical specialists and even veterinary specialists, about central or central register of control trials, also database of Cochrane library. And we should analyze clinical trials relevant to our field of interest. There are other specialist databases relevant to rehabilitation specialists. Agricola is a database of US Department of Agriculture. REPEC, Research Papers in Economy, and their main hub of articles is Ideas. I encourage all specialists, let's say pharmacy specialists working on pharmacoeconomics studies, they should use searches, employ searches through Ideas. All specialists, it's a multidisciplinary registry, nowadays have access to DOAJ, Directory of Open Access Journals, and it can be used for systematic reviews, for narrative reviews, because it's one of the largest database or register of peer-reviewed open access journals, more than 15,000 journals. And soon this registry will have advanced search options. Additional channels, of course, for PhD candidates looking at English PhD dissertations, ProQuest is rich hub of dissertations. And EBSCOhost, unfortunately, in Eastern Europe, not so popular, but it's a huge hub. And in US, in Western Europe, it's used by most researchers and authors. How we structure? Main point is to have at least 2 evidence-based databases for our searches. And there is no need to cite some of undesirable references. Let's say references in non-peer-reviewed magazines. We often even do not advise to cite Wikipedia articles in scholarly articles, but Wikipedia references to our articles can be counted by altmetrics.com, where we submit our articles. There are some good points. First of all, we pay attention to journal impact factor and other metrics, indexation, journal prestige, acceptance and rejection rate. If rejection rate is too high, 90%, 95%, like in Nature, there is no need to submit a paper of specialist interest. So we should take into account also size of circulation, but unfortunately, nowadays circulation is going down, print circulation, because of open access. So, and we should pay more attention to manuscript turnaround time. If it takes just 2 weeks up to 3 weeks, first round of peer review, it's good, and it's worth submitting your good article, good manuscript to journal. We should also pay attention to reviewer comments, editorial characteristics, good editors, let's say in Lancet, with huge editorial experience and expertise in publication ethics are good examples of excellent or top journals. We may also rely on suggestions of our colleagues, and this is why I know in most Eastern European journals, most authors submit their articles to the same journals. I'm not going to delve deeper into this field, into this topic, because I know that most Eastern European journals submit to just 2 or 3 Polish or other emerging science journals. So opinion of our colleagues also important, but we should take that in the context of all other factors. And we should also pay attention whether the journal publishes articles for open access or not, or whether it's gold open access or diamond open access. Gold means authors or their institution should pay high publication charges. We may also pay attention whether the journal is covered by social media, Facebook, Twitter, and other channels, Wikipedia, let's say. Press attention to journal. If you publish something in your journal, whether blogs or press reflect on your articles, comment. So it's also important. It's important for visibility, for quality assurance. So all these factors are important for targeting quality journals. How we calculate importance, how we quantify importance of published articles, of course, based on Scopus and Web of Science citations. Here is an example of highly influential journal article, review article. We should also publish editorials. These are small articles, and good journals increase their quality if they regularly publish meaningful editorials. Like top rheumatology journals, they regularly publish editorials commenting on their articles, published articles, or not related to their articles, simply editorials with just 1 or 2 main points. So editorials are also a way to encourage editorial board members to contribute to their journals. At least 1-2 editorials annually is important to have your editorial board members from each editorial board member to keep him or her active. Again, we should pay attention how titles are structured, because in editorials without abstracts, title is one of the attractive part of article, and it also may contain interrogative question mark. Case studies for novice scientists or scientists working on COVID-19. Let's say nowadays we are looking for cases of autoimmune side effects of COVID-19 or novel coronavirus, and we may publish, even established scientists, researchers may publish case reports or images in good journals like Lancet, like New England Journal of Medicine. And in our group, we also have one important, like his name is Sakir Ahmed, who published important images in New England Journal of Medicine. So these clinical case reports have low level of evidence. We appreciate that, but these case reports can change drug marketing practice guidelines, and all these case reports should be based again on equator standards called CARE, case report checklist. This checklist tells us that patient description should be detailed, well structured, with information, pertinent information about physical science and instrumental science. We also encourage publishing not just case report, but also case-based reviews. You found something, one case, you publish it based on CARE guideline, but you also perform comprehensive searches and you publish case-based reviews. One case and table analyzing or summarizing information about all related or similar cases. And of course, some of case reports published as images, letters are also highly influential. And let's say one article, one letter in 1972 about colchicine opened new era on treatment of autoinflammatory disorders. So the same can happen in many other fields of science. Now, how we structure original research papers. You all know about their structure: introduction, methods, results, and discussion. IMRAD. You know that introduction should contain information about novelty, working hypotheses, how to justify, how to formulate working hypothesis, and then consider null and alternative hypotheses. We should pay more attention to methods, where and when we collected data, inclusion and exclusion criteria of subjects, animal subjects, human subjects, etc. We should describe design. All PhD candidates should know about different study designs. And the most important is, of course, different types of observational study designs. I'll talk about these study designs now in a few minutes. So if you describe new tests, new drugs, please describe in detail. And in terms of statistics, few things are important. Analyze and ask your authors, if you are an editor or reviewer, ask to recheck distribution. If it is normal distribution, then you can use T-student test to compare different parameters, the same parameter in different groups. But if parameters are not normally distributed, then you will use Mann-Whitney U-test. And the same refers to linear regression analysis, logistic regression analysis. These tests are widely used by PhD candidates. They will be also asked to calculate sample size for pilot studies, new studies, without any precedents, without any analogs. We do not ask, let's say in pathophysiology, in pathological anatomy, scientists collect data, new data about a series of cases, and there is no need to calculate sample size. But if there are several similar studies and you plan to do the same, you are obliged to calculate sample size and then perform collect data and perform statistical analysis. I told you about p-values and 95% confidence intervals. Discussion should tell us again about new aspect of our study. In footnotes, we disclose conflict of interest, our relationship with pharma industry, our sponsors. Unfortunately, in Eastern Europe, again, this field is overlooked by most scientists without any attention to disclosure of their conflicts of interest. And now about cohort studies. It's main non-experimental design for PhD candidates. What does it mean? Experimental means if you have drug and you experiment with this drug, you conduct trial. If you do not conduct trial, you simply analyze data without using drug therapy. You perform observational analysis. It can, or cohort, in one cohort of subjects, homogeneous cohort, subject with similar features, similar age, similar gender, or similar disease, cohort of rheumatoid arthritis, cohort of patients with the same disease. So the most important for cohort studies, whether it's retrospective or prospective, whether you have homogeneity in your cohort. So it can be disease, risk factor, etc. If you have prospective study, you should have 6 months, 1 year, or enough time for follow-up period. And within that period, you should calculate number of deaths, number of disease cases. So if you calculate within 1 year, you have just one death, one lethal event in your cohort, power of your analysis will be low because you cannot rely on that short period. Validity is lacking because of short period of follow-up. However, you can also have 10-year follow-up. You can invest more in your research, spend more money, more funding. But again, if you have just 1, 2, 3 little events, not interesting. So again, you will be criticized because of lack of validity. So at start, you should carefully plan whether you will have a lot of death events. Let's say in patients with severe COVID-19, definitely within 1 year or even within 1 month post-COVID-19, number of death events will be high. So cohort studies are important. If you have problems with prospective cohort studies, you can have retrospective cohort studies. So you collect data and retrospectively analyze without spending a lot of funds. So you should also pay attention to a Kaplan-Meier curve in retrospective or prospective cohort studies. It helps us to analyze incidence of outcomes. Particularly, one of the common outcomes of cohort studies is death. One of the famous, well-known cohort studies is Framingham cohort study, health study about cardiovascular risk factors. It started in 1948, and within several decades, these study analyzed cardiovascular risk factors, death rate in different groups within these large cohort. So we also know about group within cohort we call nests. You know, nest for birds, but nest in cohort studies is used for case control study. Let's say in one cohort we separate 2 groups with different risk factors and compare within one cohort studies. It's called nested case control study. And in Framingham health study, there were several nested case control studies. Again, it's used primarily for biomarker studies, let's say to analyze importance of C-reactive protein in terms of enhanced atherosclerosis. And there is also case control studies. Again, PhD candidates frequently used, but in Eastern Europe, the importance of case control studies is exaggerated. Why? Because all scientists think that it's important and mandatory to have cases and controls, let's say disease and healthy controls. It's useful only in some cases. There are some differences. So you can have cohort study instead of case control study. Case control studies are difficult because you should collect your healthy controls living in the same hospital, staying in the same hospital, in the same geographic area, or healthy controls difficult to collect because you should obtain ethics approval, and you should also control healthy controls as well, and you should inform healthy controls that they are also at risk because of something, etc., etc. There are a number of factors that should be taken into account for case control studies. And it's difficult to match cases and controls based on age, gender, other factors. In reality or real world trial studies, we do not have strict matching. We will have differences in age, gender, and to correct for these factors, we simply use regression analysis or sophisticated statistics to correct for age, gender in case control studies. So we should also face numerous selection biases. Let's say in case control studies, patients are selected after exclusion of numerous patients with various factors. So you narrow your scope of interest, and these group cases arm in case, your case group is far from real world or population sample. So there are some limitations of case control studies, but still these case control studies are widely employed. And if you use if you rely on p-values in case control studies, please pay also attention to 95% of confidence interval, and also use logistic regression analysis to calculate risks of several factors. Cross-sectional studies, again, observational research study. And here in cross-sectional studies, we should have exposure, let's say exposure to radiation, exposure to novel virus, and outcome, death, severe disease, etc., etc. At start point in cross-sectional studies, we strictly define exposure and outcome. And we may calculate, let's say, incidence and prevalence of certain factors. Prevalence of TB on patients treated with biologics, etc. Cross-sectional study design is used by researchers who run surveys. It's also very useful study design. And it's usually conducted in a short period of time. It's used to justify clinical trials. So cross-sectional studies have their own niche in the evidence-based pyramid. Again, cohort study, all these observational studies should be reported in line with equator network standard called STROBE, strengthening reporting of observational studies in epidemiology statement, STROBE. And the STROBE has its own extensions. you can see and you can familiarize. Again, detailed analysis. If you go through these statements, you will understand different study designs. Let's say cohort study, I discussed eligibility criteria or inclusion and exclusion criteria. Case control study, slightly different STROB statement, extension of STROB statement. And clinical trials. Editors should know that not all clinical trials are acceptable by journal editors. Only clinical trials registered by clinicaltrials.gov or other prestigious databases of clinical trials are acceptable. Once you report it, you published, now you need to promote. You see here different promotion channels. ResearchGate. All scientists should use ResearchGate to archive their open access articles, or at least put record information about abstracts, about other details. So please use ResearchGate for archiving your published articles, PDFs, without violation of copyrights. And of course, you should know that research repository is also important. Some countries, some universities have prestigious research repositories. Everything published by faculty members is reposited either automatically or manually by faculty members. We discussed today author metrics. All these author profiles are contributing to your profile metrics. Let's say Google Scholar Citations. Again, I encourage all participants of today's webinar to register with Google Scholar Citations and manually check their previous publications visible on Google Scholar. For Eastern European or Slavic scientists, it's important. So a few words about retractions. Anything published in any journal, erroneous article with big statistical mistake, without ethics approval, without approval of all authors, can be retracted at some point. We analyzed 6 years ago rheumatology retractions, around 30, more than 30 retractions, and we realized that retractions were because of methodological, honest errors, plagiarism, blunt plagiarism, copyright violation, statistical, honest mistakes, and absence of ethics approval. How we analyze? Easy. We can go to PubMed and analyze retraction. There are around 8,000 retractions in the field of biomedicine. It's a well-organized platform, PubMed, and it contains information about all retracted articles. In the field of veterinary medicine, we have also some retractions. Here we see 85 retractions. And scientists who wish to learn from others' mistakes may go to retracted articles and understand why these articles were retracted. Here is an example of non-Anglophone orthopedic surgeon who published numerous articles, and all these articles, review articles, were copy-paste written, retracted after publications, after these articles were tested by Authenticate system. So one of the leading anti-plagiarism scientists from New York, Miguel Roig, perhaps the most common violation of reader-writer contract occurs when we present some aspect of others' work as our own. So we steal others' ideas, graphics, tables, and pretend that this is our own intellectual product. be very careful. If you write articles, avoid copying sentences, avoid copying paragraphs, even in methodology section. And finally, conclusion of this part of our today's webinar is about authors who should be well aware of reporting guidelines and should try to use these reporting guidelines, should consult before writing their articles. Almost all scientific biomedicine can have research reporting relevant guideline or standard in Equator network platform. And second point, we should adhere to established standards of authorship declaration. We shouldn't have numerous co-authors in our articles. It's discouraged by research and publication ethics specialists. And we should also adhere to recommendations of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, whether we are medics, surgeons, psychologists, and specialists in allied field of science. Thank you for your attention. I am now open to your questions, and taking this opportunity, I once again would like to thank all our participants who registered and supported this webinar. I wanted to mention all of them name by name, but just will mention just few. Katerina Zaichko, Dmitro Fetkov, Marta Jus and her team, Irina Shapoval, Bohdana Daskal, yes, Professor Petro Geric, Professor
Roman Yatsishin.
Yes, I mentioned him. Lady from Yelena Bondarenko, veterinary specialist. Yeah, Yana, editor of Ukrainian Medical Journal, and others. So, yeah, Vladimira Boyadjieva, Sofia, Bulgaria. Thank you to all our supporters. This webinar series couldn't be possible without their support, registrations, and also promotion of this webinar series. Hopefully, we will continue this webinar series. We'll have more speakers and also more participants. And also, finally, I thank Danila Halsky University, also our mentor and evaluator, Professor Vasil Lanchina from Chicago, Professor Valentina Chopiak, also our mentor, our colleague who work and also contributes a lot to the webinar series. She also used to contribute to face-to-face meetings, and I'm sure we should continue working together, continue discussing topics of interest to researchers, reviewers, journal editors, and all these webinar series surely will help to increase quality of articles from Eastern Europe and increase indexability of your journals. So thank you very much. Big thank you to all participants and supporters of our webinar series.
Yeah, Arman, thank you very much for your excellent presentation and for your regular contribution. And we have a few questions from our participants. The first one is from Professor Jus. How can we omit plagiarism? suggestions? And the second one, could you provide a few words? Why is it important to publish articles in open access journals? And what is difference between golden and platinum open access journals? And which platinum open access journals could you recommend for Ukrainian authors? I mean general medical journals, because it's really important for us. Thank you.
Basically, there are two questions. First question is about
Plagiarism.
How to avoid plagiarism. Yeah. First of all, authors should be honest and they should know English very well. They should read more English literature, good literature in Lancet, in New England Journal of Medicine, Nature. Without reading journals, they cannot improve their English. Writing will be disadvantaged. So basic point, bottom line is to speak English and to write in your own words. If you read something, of course, extract ideas, refer to these ideas extracted from somewhere, put in references, cite reference, primary source of that idea, that information, and avoid word by word copying. Write in your own words, learn English, read more articles, and also before submission to a journal, recheck your text by Grammarly, by Google Scholar, whether passages of your text are similar to those published by other scientists. If yes, then paraphrase, add proper reference. Some scientists claim that they do not plagiarize by putting whole paragraph and linking whole paragraphs to references. That's not okay. They should paraphrase, they should cite ideas, they shouldn't cite word by word. And second, where Eastern European scientists should publish. They can publish in platinum open access journals, or they can publish in journals waiving publication charges. But of course, there are some subscription journals, Springer Nature, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, without open access. But all these large publishers, visibility even without open access. So if you know a specific good journal in your field of interest, let's say rheumatology, immunology, with good indexing, Scopus, Web of Science, Medline, you should first of all think and target about this type of journals. And then should check whether they provide open access format. My main suggestion is to target Croatian Medical Journal. You probably know about that journal, Eastern European Scientists, because it's ethical journal, small journal. So if you have good, something good, free of plagiarism, target that journal. Also, if your article is of general interest, submit to General Medical Journal, which you can select from Scimago country rank, and all open access journals are clearly marked in these on this platform. So, and if are lost, cannot find target journal, ask expert. And you now know who is expert in this field, who can help you. It's a self-promotion, useful.
Thank you very much.
For our webinar participants.
Thank you very much, dear Armen. Who would like to add something before we finished? Probably Professor Lonchina. Who would like to say something?
So, yeah, of course. Again, another excellent series of lectures today. Thank you, Alana, for organizing this, and thank you, Armen and Latika, so
Dear Vasil, we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Yeah, I know. I had trouble. Okay, there we go.
Fine.
Okay, so to be the devil's advocate about social media, and simply I want to throw this up for points of discussion. I mean, I think it's very well researched out and presented, the importance of social media, how to do it, and that. But I think one also has to think, what is the real purpose of on social media certain works? I mean, it is a certain amount of self advertisement. And as Armen had said, I mean, and I think Latika also said that social media, we don't know how the results of that, you know, the popularity of it, the citations of it, et cetera, there's really no correlation with the quality of the work that we are. And it's really the quality that is the most important factor in all of this. I mean, the research that comes out has to be of high quality. How do we recognize? One thing is which journals accept it. I mean, if the article is peer-reviewed in a highly impact journal, then that by itself puts it on the stage that this is high quality research. And you know, that's what we should strive for. We should strive for, when we do our work, that whether it's writing a systematic review or whether it's laboratory research, that what we produce is excellent. And then that excellence will lead us to recognition. So today I heard about the Nobel Prize being awarded for physics, and I'm thinking, and I'm sure these physicists did not go through life saying, what do I have to do to get the Nobel Prize? What they did was they did excellent research, and they were persistent, and they didn't waver. And what is the result of that? They're honored by having the Nobel Prize. Okay, Zinho, out. So I think if, you know, we can't lose sight of that message, is that no matter what we do, I mean, we shouldn't be writing for the sake of writing, for the sake of increasing our bibliography, because we're going to get advanced in our academic field or in our university. In America, there's great push, publish or perish. And so many people write prolifically, and there's tens of authors on each paper. And I'm glad that nowadays we're having each author become responsible for all of the material, and they have to vouch for the fact that they're responsible for it. So you don't just add your professor because he's in charge of the department, and then the rector because he's the rector of the university, he automatically gets his name on it. So I think that is very important, and I think that's the first thing we have to emphasize, is that what we do in research, what we do in writing, has to be of utmost quality, and has to be for the benefit of advancement of knowledge, advancement of science, advancement of knowledge for how we treat our patients, and how best to deal with that. So again, I mean, I'm just being on the other side. I think all the, in fact, having said that, I must say that I did an experiment last week with Twitter, in that we had a conference on critical care for cardiovascular surgery. And during the conference, I tweeted, depending on what the subject matter was, say, learn more about this subject by reading chapter 39 of my book, you know, that I published a year ago. And I did get some responses, and oh, excellent supplementation, et cetera, and depending on what handles you use and all, you know, you get the reaction. So I looked at the Altmetrics. I think it's a little too soon to really know how often the publisher updates the Altmetrics, but there was a little bump up. I don't know if this is the usual bump up because it's the 1st of October, and maybe on the 1st of the month is when we get the data. But you know, I belong to a series of 8 volumes in this series. Are flat. They haven't changed, and some of them go up but very little. And my thing went up, you know, by 1,000 hits. So that's good. But I don't know if the twitting had anything specific to do with it. But anyway, but I am intrigued by that, and I did try it out, and I will long-term wise whether that really had an impact by seeing what the result will be over the next coming months. But again. You know, I think the part about ethical writing is very, very important. I mean, the plagiarism. I mean, I review so many papers where you can pick out almost immediately what is taken verbatim out of other papers. That is, you just cut and paste. And that, I think, maybe people don't realize that this is not good. I mean, perhaps if one's command of the English language is not that great, you feel that you have to take sentences out of someone else's because they help. It's better that you say it in your own words, even if it's not that good. Have someone correct it, to have an English editor correct it, than it is to just cut and paste. I mean, that is not a good practice, and that will get rejected when that happens. And then the citations, as was mentioned, I mean, self-citations, I mean, just putting in, you know, 5, 10, or 20 of your own references, it's not quality science. I mean, you want to look at the references, you want to do your research, you want to do your search strategy in various databases, and take a look at what others have written about the subject that really is of good quality. And use that to structure and construct your own paper. So again, thank you to Armand and Latika for the great presentations as always, and Elena for organizing this. I mean, what a great number of webinars over the summer. I mean, this is truly important and very good. I wish we had more participants.
Yes.
This is so important to spread this amongst you know, our young physicians and writers and researchers. It's important to get this information out.
Vasil, thank you very much. I just wanted to add a few points about open access. Open access is quite important for Eastern European scientists. Yeah. They should publish in open access journals to increase visibility and citability of their articles. There is some evidence that the more authors publish in open access journals, the higher chances of citations. And citations are also a source of currency of our of our science. So this is why it's of paramount importance for Eastern European scientists, whether Nobel Prize laureates or other scientists, they should publish in journals. What about Nobel Prize laureates or those with high ambitions? They should target Nature, Science, Lancet, because these are traditionally subscription-based journals, but they are now expanding open access options with high publication charges, because these are top scientific journals. And no matter what type of open access model acceptable for Nobel Prize laureates, they will publish, they will go for it. Regarding, we performed survey. It was a few months ago, and we realized that number of Eastern European or Ukrainian data users increased. They contributed to our survey. We see that among Eastern European scientists, number of Twitter users from Ukraine is sizable. We also, on India, there are not many Twitter users because of some reasons, but the number is still high because the main language is, mother tongue is English, and use it. So Twitter should be used, and it should be used to support us and your PhD candidates because they need at some point to perform survey, especially in the time of pandemic, and survey studies are based on Twitter activities or WhatsApp activities in India, not Facebook, of course. Twitter is more useful. Twitter is also used at conferences for, they use hashtag and attract a lot of attention. And again, after conferences, Twitter hashtags can be analyzed and can be also produce these type of analysis can help produce article. Again, it's used by Latika, by Indians, and I think that Ukrainians should also think about how they are going to benefit from Twitter channel. Twitter channel is for commenting articles, spotting some mistakes. Of course, it's painful. It's sometimes it's even it's insulting. They post insulting comments. There are some arrogant who insult, who plagiarized, who published something erroneous, etc., etc. But still, Twitter channel for unearthing or revealing erroneous science. And there was some, I'm not going to cite that particular article, but there was evidence that social media, particularly Twitter, is useful for tweeting, for finding erroneous science. And final point about, it should be about your course on bioethics. I hope to include also something about plagiarism or redundant science. Redundant science and plagiarism go side, and redundancies in articles or redundant reviews, redundant systematic reviews, because it's because authors do not use bibliographic databases, Scopus, Web of Science, or they use PubMed, but they in a strange, odd way. They should use it in a more professional way, redundancies, or to reveal new science. So if Eastern European scientists increase access to Scopus and other databases, it will reduce number of redundant science. So hopefully you will also cover some of these topics, hopefully, during your course of bioethics. I received some points whether this bioethics course is open to non-European, non-Ukrainian, or it's just tell us, for participants, whether it's for a specific group of participants. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Armen, the bioethics course at the Ukrainian Catholic University is a year-long certificate program. And it has many, many topics. And one of them is clinical medical ethics, which I teach, which is really just a two-day seminar, because the seminars are once a month or twice a month sometimes, but for the foreign lectures, it's once a month, various people talk. And this year it's going to be virtual because I was planning to be in Ukraine at this time, but cannot be. So yes, and it's taught in the Ukrainian language. So it is, the audience, of course, is Ukrainian speaking because it's a university course. It's, based in Lviv, and it had been on site. People come there, or we go to Kyiv. We go back and forth to give the lectures so that we can encompass a larger audience. But it's basically a year course. And my participation is, as far as medical ethics, is just a part of it. There's also a part on research ethics, and that's taught by my in Chicago, Emily Anderson, who's one of the ethicists at the Loyola University in Chicago. So she has been coming to Lviv 3 years, lecturing on the ethics of research. And as we are trying to institute an institutional review board at UKU as a pilot project on how to do this and how to carry out proper research. And as an aside, since I've got a lot of influential people here listening, there is a grant. It's called the Fogarty Scholarship or Fogarty Grant. That is a combination UKU and Loyola in Chicago, where those that want to participate and obtain a master's or even a doctorate degree in the ethics of clinical research can apply for this, and through a series of online courses from Loyola University, and then in-place courses at UKU, and some 1 or 2 sessions over the course of a couple years, actually going to Chicago to participate in some courses. You can obtain a degree in clinical research and the ethics of clinical research. So that is available. If you want to go on the Ukrainian Catholic University site and look under bioethics and look Fogarty. You can apply anytime. It's a rolling type admission. We look at applicants every few months, and so whoever is interested into this and obtaining a degree just in the methodology of research and in the ethics of research, feel free to. We encourage you to apply.
This was highly promoted on Facebook. This program.
Good. Yeah. Now it needs to be promoted on Twitter. Really, I mean, I agree with Armin. I think Ukrainians need to use Twitter a lot more, and we can start with our group. We should all. I mean, I have my Twitter handle, and I do from Twitter. I mean, I do that a lot more than I do Facebook. I don't use Facebook that much, but Twitter I use a lot.
So, Vasil, you create critical mass of ethical specialists, and how many specialists graduated your course last year? I mean, face-to-face course, 10, 20?
I think we're about 20 people enrolled in the certificate course, right? But these are not all medical. You see, this is ethics, bioethics. So there are pharmacists, theologians, philosophers, some physicians, some nurses. Various people that interested in bioethics, which is more of a theoretical, whereas clinical medical ethics is very practical. It's for physicians that deal with patients, and how do you deal with them on a day-to-day basis. So that's my contribution to the course. But bioethics is a very broad and really theoretical field. But it's good that Ukraine needs. I think a lot of training and a lot of popularization of this course that is very, very important.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Very intriguing. And I think all ethics committee members should be interested in your course. And I mean, in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vasil. And
Thank you.
Olena?
Thank you very much to all our participants, to all our speakers, and I would like to say have a good evening, and we are waiting for new articles from our participants in good journals, index journals, ethical journals, of course, without any plagiarism.
Точно.
Так. Отже, бажаємо всім гарного вечора, так, і до нових зустрічей. До побачення.
Дякую, до побачення. Всього доброго.
Всього доброго, до побачення.
Bye-bye.